Hey everybody, I got Timmy Broad with me today. He's the IT director at Celebration Church in Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is become an oasis in a sense ever since COVID. Population explosion. Timmy, in fact, is from Indianapolis, Indiana, moved down there in, what was it, 2018, 2019, Timmy?
Correct.
All right, cool. So tell us a little bit about how you found your role at Celebration Church down in Austin.
Yeah, we were members. We were serving. We were part of. We called Celebration Church home, similar to our church in Indy that we were at for 7 years prior to relocating to Austin. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I think that that's a trend that I've seen throughout my career, whether it's in corporate America or in in ministry and vocational ministry, is that the Lord has planted us in a local church, a very healthy, local church where our family and our kids are involved heavily. And that has been the primary thing. And then just through relationships and conversations and just the Lord's leading in very mysterious ways. In some cases, I've ended up on the staff of those churches. So this is the third church that I've been on, a part of a staff, had the opportunity to be a part of the staff. And so I think my career is quickly overcoming the corporate side of my career and becoming more on the vocational ministry side than the corporate side. But it's just been a lot of fun. But I always tell my wife, if things get to a point where the Lord is making clear it's time to leave the staff, I need to do that in the most healthy way so that we can stay a part of Celebration Church as long as we're here, because we love the leadership, we love our pastors, we love the people of Celebration, and it is about the people and about service of the local church in the context of Celebration first and foremost. And then if I happen to be able to be on staff, great, that's just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, and Celebration Church does a couple of really unique things I wanted to talk to you about. So one of the things is called Endeavor. Celebration Church invites local business leaders into the church, I believe weekly. And this is something that I think would be quite interesting in Austin, especially I think other churches should adopt this in Dallas, in Houston, because we've got a lot of Fortune 500 companies moving to Texas, setting up shop in Texas. So Timmy, tell us a little bit about Endeavor.
Yeah, I want to even relate this a little bit to, I love church history. And when we look at the history of the church, especially in the European context, or certainly even in the US context, throughout Europe, what do you see at the center of each community? You see a church. So the church used to be the center of technology. It used to be the center of business. It used to be the center of, healthcare. I mean, you see shreds of this remaining in different contexts, maybe in Europe, although Europe is largely unchurched today, but in many US cities, you still see this. You might see a Methodist hospital. You might see, St. Vincent in Indianapolis. You see things like that. But I think we've really started to see a shift away culturally in the United States and in the West from the local church being the center of influence for all of those things, for business, for thought, for, philosophy, just anything. And I think that really we as the Big C church and the local church, we have to get back to this place where we reclaim what is rightfully ours, which are those things. I mean, it's rightfully the local church's responsibility to step back into and stay in those areas of influence. Mm-hmm. So that's really the heart of Endeavor, is to say, the local church can use a lot more of what the corporate world of the business community has to offer, both operationally and structurally, and and thought, and just all of the different things. But on the other side of that, the business community can use a lot more, biblical worldview. And so it's kind of looking at both sides of that. What are the things that both of those entities can bring to the table? The local church bringing into the business community, and then those business leaders being a part of those local churches, how can they better equip the saints? How can they better fulfill the Great Commission? How can they, again, step out of anonymity in those churches and into leadership roles, into mentoring people, into, just being in community with one another. And so that's really the heart of Endeavor. And I think it's just an incredible thing that we've got to start to see duplicated and replicated in the smaller, in the individual local church around the world, and certainly in the US.
Yeah, and with Endeavor, is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly? And then I bet churches that are listening would really want to understand this. Is this something on the Celebration Church's website where they can find more information? Like, let's talk a little bit tactically how this works and how churches can learn more about it.
Yeah, Endeavor is linked on our site, celebration.church. That's the website. We do have 2 meetings minimum per month. And what those are is we have every 4 weeks. They're kind of staggered every 2 weeks. So every 4 weeks, we have what's called an Endeavor Night, which is our volunteer teams, people from outside Celebration Church, people from local businesses, whatever it is. This is not a networking event per se. Networking, I think, happens organically. But really what this is this is an open door. This is it's a non-confrontational. It doesn't carry all the baggage of maybe what some people may think a Sunday morning church experience is, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. But it is we do these on Thursday evening. So it's something you come to after work, or, as you're leaving the office. It can even just be a quick stop for an hour. You're meeting others that are specific to your industry, but also across varying industries. So we meet and typically hear from a speaker, or multiple speakers. Sometimes we'll do a panel format. And then we break out into small groups that are typically industry specific. So you might have a healthcare small group table. We still stay in a large group room, but we meet at these tables and just break out specific to each industry, which is just really, really neat, because what that does is that builds your confidence as a person that is in the business world, or even you can be in vocational ministry and you can come to Endeavor. It's open to all. Small business owners, startup, anything. And what you're doing is it's building your confidence that you're not alone. You're not alone out in this mission field that is the business world, or that is the day-to-day, the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You're not alone in your company. You're not alone if you work from home. You're not isolated. You are allowed to speak out about your faith in an appropriate way. We walk through how to navigate from a legal perspective, some of those different HR guidelines and different things like that. People are often surprised what you can say. And so we do those once a month, and then the off 2 weeks. So then 2 weeks later, we would do what's called an Endeavor Team Night. And again, anyone can contextualize this to their organization, to their local church. But Endeavor Team Night is really where the volunteer teams that make Endeavor happen as a ministry in Celebration Church, where we gather on a smaller, team basis. We pray together. We have a prayer team that is one of our serve teams on the Endeavor, in the Endeavor ministry in general. We pray together. We typically eat some food together, whether it's, appetizers or dinner or whatever the case may be. And then we will break out into our serve teams. And then we discuss, so for instance, I lead the connections team. What our team does is we take interest from people who want to join, or even just are curious about what Endeavor is. And we take those individuals and we seek to connect them with a serve team within Endeavor that best suits kind of what they're looking to serve, the area that they're looking to serve in within Endeavor. So that might be on the Endeavor communications team, might be the Endeavor events team. There's 7 different teams. And so that's just how we have it structured. But the beautiful thing about the Endeavor team night is it really just keeps this synergy alive with those who are serving, to make sure that Endeavor continues, make sure that it's excellent, make sure that it's consistent. And there's a lot of dreaming of what is to come. There's a lot of celebration of what has been as well. So those that's the main structure.
During each meeting, what are some of the top conversation topics? Does it just kind of flow depending on who's there, or do certain topics come up over and over again? Is it like tactical business? Is it more faith driven? Is it HR questions? Or is it just organic in the sense that you just kind of let happen what happened, or do you prepare like discussion points beforehand for each group?
A little bit of all of that. So the discussion points that are prepared for those small group breakout sessions, you don't have to follow those. Those are more of just a structure if you need it in your group or at your table. So that's certainly a resource that's there. A lot of what happens though in those groups is it's just a lot of conversation, a lot of asking of those questions, like how do you navigate, starting an employee resource group within your company. So I have a background in Fortune 500, and so I understand, but I also have a background in startups. So I understand everything from the large to the small and everything in between, but it looks very, very, very different based on the size of your organization, and also based on if your company has a global influence. That's even just another layer. And so we really just kind of, we lean into conversation, we lean into what have experiences been, what works, what doesn't work. But as far as, those Endeavor nights, once a month that are open to all, and they're run by the Endeavor Dream Team is what we call the Endeavor volunteer team. Those typically involve kind of like a keynote speaker coming in, or a panel of individuals from different industries. We've done that as well. For instance, we've had, if I may just name drop a little bit, I think I'd be okay to do this, but we've had Chick-fil-A executives, former and current, come in. We've had Coca-Cola Consolidated executives. We've had Dell. We've had the founder of Annie Ann's Pretzels. She happens to be a member here at Celebration. Has shared her story, what's worked for her. There's a fairly large restaurant chain in the U.S. that the owner and founder has, the CEO has been connected with our founder of Endeavor, and so he's come in and spoken. So it really can just vary. I mean, a lot of different industries represented in that. And when you have a keynote speaker coming in, obviously they have to be a little bit more general and less tactical, because they're understanding that what may work in the restaurant industry from a chaplaincy, corporate chaplaincy perspective or what have you, may not really translate to healthcare, right? So you have to be a little bit more general, because you don't want to get so pigeonholed into your industry that you lose 80% of the room, if that makes sense. But that's kind of the format of where we take, we have a combination of high level, applicable across different industries. And then what we do is we kind of break down into those groups and contextualize it for the industries themselves.
What's next? It sounds like it's very successful. I want to go. I want to be there. Is this a larger event the church is planning on doing, or are you thinking about making it a playbook that you can share with other churches so they can do it in their community?
Yeah, I think what's next is internally here at Celebration, we're going to be changing a little bit of the format of how we happen to do it in the local church context of Celebration. It just so happens that we're pioneering this. There are other churches that have done this in some form. It's interesting what you hear about when you start doing something like this. that you're not the first, and it's great. You don't need to be the first. But it's the first time Celebration has done it. So what we feel that we need to do to best steward the future of Endeavor is we need to create, if you will, like an Endeavor in a box, and create something that is almost a curriculum or a playbook, or something that you could almost grab off of a shelf and ship it, whether physically or just figuratively, ship it to another church. And then their leadership could put it in place and contextualize it for their expression of the Big C church in the local context. So I think that's one of the big things that's next is those of us on the Endeavor lead team actually taking the volunteer teams that we lead and writing sections of that playbook, if you will. How do we tactically, everything from vision to very, very tactical, how do we actually make this a successful ministry? And how has it worked for us? And then, obviously it's an open source. It's not something that is, I think that's an important thing for churches to do, is to, where at all possible, make things open source. And I use that term because in the tech space, we know that open source is open source. But typically, what we see in the business world is, hey, if Apple does something or if Microsoft does something, they want it to be their intellectual property. They want it to be their idea. They're gonna have teams of lawyers to protect that thing, whatever. The church, in my opinion, my humble opinion, should do things differently, where we're taking our ideas, taking the things that we have been able to steward in the smaller context of our local church and making it widely available in an age where everything's online, everything is accessible online, information moves at the speed of light. I mean, there's no reason why we can't take these great ideas, put them out there, and then churches large and small and everything in between can make use of them. And it's like a grocery store. You don't go into the grocery store and buy everything on the shelf. You take what you need and you leave the rest. So the heart is that if a local church sees this Endeavor in a box and they see that 60% of it is applicable for them, great. Maybe 20% of it is applicable for them, fantastic. But that there's some replication and multiplication. I think multiplication is the big thing when it comes to a ministry like Endeavor. And really what the church does in ministry, the local church does in ministry in general, should be about multiplication. That's the Great Commission, right? So that's the heart of where we're headed next.
Yeah, and I can see that especially like the Endeavor in a box or playbook, the open source to what you're doing, bringing business leaders into the church regularly to be the center of the church again, tying it back to what you were discussing with just the history of church in general. It's useful for Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, especially Austin, because as you and I chatted before we started the recording, I think something like 60% of Fortune 500 companies are setting up some sort of larger office just in Texas somewhere. So there's just been an explosion of leaders in that area, especially in Austin. So are you seeing challenges getting these people to come to church, or is the challenge really like speaking to them a way where, because I have to imagine a lot of people coming from out of state moving there and just being welcoming and trying to get them to know the lay of the land. So was this initially started as a way to get more folks aware of Celebration? Was this kind of pitched as a networking event? Like what was the beginning conversations like to say, like, hey, let's try something, this Endeavor thing might work? Like, tell us a little bit about the founding story.
Yeah, that's great. The vision of this was vision of our senior pastors, Joe and Lori Champion, and they're the founding pastors 23 years ago of Celebration Church as well. We're a fairly young church, again, still the original founding pastors. So we have pastors who have incredible vision, and at the heart of a lot of pretty much everything that they envision is simply equipping and developing leaders, and it's not to just build a bigger, if you talk to Joe Champion today, he would say, we never imagined that this thing would get as big as it is, from an attendance standpoint, from a reach standpoint, from an influence, all those different kind of things. We were following the Lord's calling to relocate from Louisiana to Austin, Texas, and plant a church in the year 2000. So it's not about, numbers are important because they equate to life change, but it's not about the numbers. It's not about growing Celebration per se. And I think that's why a lot of our focus, after only a year, just over a year of doing Endeavor as a ministry, is really shifting to how can we equip the Big C church and empower the Big C church and multiply this thing, because it's not about celebration. It's about building the kingdom. It was never about, truly, honestly, there's no spin in this whatsoever. It was never about growing Celebration's numbers, never about growing Celebration's influence, any of that kind of stuff, unless that would have brought, and it does bring glory to the Lord and his bride, and the bride of Christ. But really, it's about stewarding an influence that we have and a timing that we have, Celebration Church in Austin, with all these companies coming in. If we're just meeting at our campus and opening our doors and saying, hey, anyone's welcome, show up, but we never actually are going out into the business community, into the creative community, into the tech community, any of these different, kind of focuses or sectors, if you will, then we're doing it wrong. And I'll just speak in the context of Celebration, but I think this is really, really applicable for the local church in general. The Great Commission is to go out and make disciples. It's not to, build a big building, and when you outgrow that building, just build another one and maybe go multi-site. And, all of those things are necessary because for local churches to, to better connect with. In other words, if you've got people driving an hour to come because for whatever the reason they connect with your church community better than 100 different other churches that they pass on the way to your physical location every Sunday or every event, you should multiply your campuses. You should go to those people. You should create, something that's closer proximity to them, so that you're stewarding those individuals, and then they can in turn multiply. Someone who's driving an hour or 45 minutes to come to your building, your physical building on a Sunday, for instance, for an event, is not going to be very inclined to invite their friends and neighbors. And if they do, those individuals are probably not going to have the same level of commitment to drive 45 minutes or an hour, right? But that's the beauty of the multi-site model and things like that. So really what this is, we are seeing that the Lord went ahead and he called our senior pastors to plant this church before the explosive growth that we're seeing right now. I think if you would have asked Joe and Lori Champion in, 1999, 2000, when they received that call to go to Austin without knowing a single soul in Austin, they showed up. They connected with the Chamber of Commerce. This was literally the first thing Joe Champion did, is he went to the Round Rock Chamber of Commerce. Round Rock being of course home to Dell and other companies. He went to the Round Rock Chamber of Commerce and he said, can we join the chamber? And they said, well, we've never had a church join the Chamber of Commerce, but I don't see why not. And I think now it's a much more common thing that you might see that chambers of commerce have some faith-based organization of some sort, or parachurch or whatever in it. But this has been the heart of our pastors since day one, is to connect with the business community, connect with the tech community, equip them to go back out. It's not, again, the physical church building should be an airport that sends people back out. You're being built into, you're serving, you're worshiping the Lord, and then you're being sent back out for the majority of the rest of the week to the mission field. So I think that if in the context of Celebration being here in Austin, if we're not equipping people to go into the tech community specifically and go into the creative community and the film community and all these different sectors and sectors, we're not stewarding what the Lord has called us to do in the context of Celebration really very well at all, if we're not doing that.
Yeah, I can see that leading from the front, right? If you don't, I see it as solving a problem. What Endeavor does is allow you to collect business leaders together, instill and have a discussion of virtues and values, and then lead them back out into their community to lead with those same virtues and values as the church. And every church could utilize this. I think you're solving a problem and using strengths. What you didn't mention, well, you did a little bit, is I love the senior pastors utilizing his staff, because you're incredibly, Timmy, one of the things that you can do is you can be an Endeavor with your experience and background as IT director, then in Fortune 500, and lead those smaller groups. So it's like solving a problem and using the strength of the staff at the same time is quite impressive. Tell us a little, I'm sure people listening are going to want to have this Endeavor open source information. When will it be available on the Celebration Church's website?
I don't have a date on that yet. One of the, creating something like this has a little bit of a double-edged sword, in the sense that, if you're making this available, but you've never really done anything quite like this before, but you're also kind of herding cats, herding people to get them together, to submit their content, to have it reviewed, and to have it, formalized, it's gonna take some time. So if I had to guess, I think that we are probably looking 9 to 12 months out before that would really be ready for public consumption, if you will. I would love for it to be a little bit quicker, but I think, sometimes excellence takes time. It's very, very important, especially when you are putting something out as a resource to the business community or business-minded people, especially executives and leadership individuals, many of whom are going to be consuming this and putting it into practice, that it's done well, that it looks good. It is, the copy is proofread, just all the little details that go into that. Yes, it's open source in a sense, but it still needs to be something that it is done excellent. It's done well. It looks good. It sounds good. It is general enough that it can be contextualized, like I've said, to different local churches and not just Celebration Church. So there's a lot that's going to go into that. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I agree. You have just what I've heard, Timmy, is the leaders that are coming there, their time is valuable and they want to spend it. And what you have to do as a church is to communicate, we understand that value. So we're going to make this look good. We're going to have a lot of senior staff there to help. And we want you to be successful if you decide to spend your time with us this week and come to Endeavor. So doing it well, executing it well, have the right staff there. It sounds like it's important. What anybody curious about this can definitely do is go to celebration.church. And as Timmy said, you can check out what they do have if you're in the Austin area. I'm sure Timmy would love to see you there. And then heck, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's not too far of a drive to check out. So Timmy, appreciate the time today. We're going to send this out to a lot of people because I have not quite heard this type of initiative articulated so well. So we appreciate your time, brother. And it's been a pleasure.
Well, Grant, thanks for having me, and tell all of my my friends back in Indy hello. We definitely miss it. This time of year is about the only time that I like to go back because I like warm weather. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity, and it's been a pleasure to be able to do this today. So
all right, thanks, Timmy.
Okay, bye.